All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something pretty complex and fascinating, the human sciences. Think of it like this. We're trying to draw a map of the most confusing, challenging territory you can possibly imagine, which is, of course, us. So, where do we even begin? Well, it all kicks off with this massive question, right? Why do we behave the way we do? I mean, this is a question that's kept people up at night for centuries. It's really the core puzzle that the human sciences are trying to piece together. Okay, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to start by figuring out what we're even talking about. Then we'll get into the tools of the trade, the different ways of looking at things, the really important ethical stuff. And finally, we'll see how it all connects. All right, let's jump right in. Before we can even start drawing this map of ours, we've got to know the lay of the land, right? So, what exactly are the human sciences, and how are they different from, the science you might think of from your chemistry or physics class? So, here's a good way to think about it. We basically have two huge maps for trying to understand everything. On one hand, you've got the natural sciences, physics, biology, all that. They're mapping the physical world. Then you have the human sciences, psychology, economics, stuff like that. They're trying to map, well, us, our inner world, our societies, how we tick. But here's where things get really TOK, right? We're going to take a step back. We're shifting from just asking questions about the world, those are first-order questions, to asking questions about our knowledge. These are second-order questions. It's like, instead of just looking at the map, we're now asking, hey, who drew this map anyway? And why'd they draw it like this? Is this even the best map to be using? Okay, so if we're going to make this map of us, what tools are we going to use? Naturally, we reach for the most reliable tool we've got for figuring stuff out. But what happens when that trusty tool just isn't quite the right fit for the job? I mean, in the natural sciences, there's no question. The scientific method is king. It's this super rigorous process, right? You observe, you form a hypothesis, you experiment. It's all about evidence. You've got to be able to see it, measure it, and test it again and again. And this is where we hit a snag. Because trying to apply that same method to people, that's a whole different ball game. Why? Because unlike an atom or a cell, people have feelings. They have their own reasons for doing things. And, crucially, they know when you're staring at them. There's this great quote from the historian R.G. Collingwood that just nails this problem. He said that any human event has two parts. An outside, that's the stuff you can actually see and measure, and an inside. That's the thoughts, the feelings, the motivations. And yeah, the scientific method is awesome for that outside stuff. But how on earth do you measure the inside? So this whole inside-outside thing creates some huge problems for us. For starters, people just act differently when they know they're being watched. We call that the observer effect. You also can't exactly recreate, say, the fall of the Roman Empire in a test tube. And, maybe most importantly, there are massive ethical boundaries you just can't cross. I mean, these are human beings we're talking about. Okay, so if the tools are different and the methods are different, it totally makes sense that the way knowledge grows and changes would be different too, right? And this brings us to a really, really important distinction between these two areas of knowledge. In the natural sciences, big changes often happen through something called a paradigm shift. This is where a whole way of looking at the world gets completely thrown out and replaced by a new one. The classic example? We used to think the Earth was the center of everything. Then, bam, Copernicus comes along, the evidence piles up, and we realize the sun is at the center. The old model's gone. And here's the key thing. These paradigms are what we call incommensurate. It's a fantastic TOK word, and it basically means you can't believe in both at the same time. You can't have the Earth and the sun at the center of the solar system. One has to be wrong. So when that shift happens, you literally throw away the old map and start using the new, more accurate one. But that's not really how it works in the human sciences. We don't really have those dramatic paradigm shifts. What we have instead are different perspectives that can all exist at the same time. Take psychology, for instance. You've got a behavioral perspective that focuses only on what people do. And right next to it, you have a cognitive perspective that's all about what people think. And one doesn't cancel the other out. And this is a classic TOK trap, so listen up. Don't confuse a perspective with a paradigm shift. See, neither of those psychology perspectives is necessarily wrong. They're just different tools, right? Different lenses to look through to try and understand something as messy and complicated as the human mind. They can both be useful, both be valid, just giving us different pieces of the same puzzle. Okay, let's talk about ethics. because this is probably one of the biggest, most important differences between these fields. When the thing you're studying is a person, well, your responsibilities just go through the roof. Ethics isn't an afterthought anymore, it's front and center. And this forces us to ask a really tough second-order question. Should some knowledge just not be sought? I mean, is the hunt for knowledge always a good thing? We really have to ask if there are some lines that we just shouldn't cross, even if it means we don't get all the answers. Think about it this way. In the natural sciences, a lot of the ethical debate is about how we apply the knowledge later on. What are the rules for using something like CRISPR gene editing? It's about what we might do in the future. But in the human sciences, the ethical problem is right there, right now. It's about making sure you don't harm the actual person you are studying in the moment. So let's bring this all together. We've talked about a lot of differences, but the main idea is that the natural and human sciences are basically using two totally different kinds of maps to explore the world. Let's put them side by side and see how they stack up. So here's the summary. Natural sciences, they're experimental, they try to get rid of all the extra variables. Human sciences, they're interpretive, they kind of have to embrace all that complexity. Natural sciences are looking for objective, universal laws. Human sciences, they're trying to understand meaning and context. And of course, you've got those big paradigm shifts versus coexisting perspectives. It really all comes back to that outside versus inside idea. And if there's one thing you take away from all this, let it be this. The human sciences are not just failed natural sciences, they're not science late. You can't judge them by the same rules. They're using a different map for a reason, because the territory they're exploring is completely different, and you could definitely argue it's a whole lot messier and more complex. So I'll leave you with one last kind of mind-bending thought to chew on. We've been using this metaphor of knowledge as a map, right? But here's the twist. In the human sciences, the person drawing the map is also on the map. We're studying ourselves. And that means our own beliefs, our own biases, our own perspectives, they're all part of the territory we're trying to map. And when you think about it like that, well, that changes everything.